Thanks very much, Sam. Hello, everyone. As Sam said, my name is Mandy Britt-Crowhurst and I use she, her pronouns. I'm going to talk for about 15 or 20 minutes, although I do have a question for you in here as well. And we have a video that is about 4 minutes long that I'm going to wrap up my part with. Before we start properly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land. I'm on Wurundjeri land and pay my respects to elders past and present. And I always like to remind us that we have come in groups like we have today to talk about keeping children safe on this land. It's happened for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So it's nice to continue that as well. My background, I started in primary school teaching, and then I learnt about this topic of child safeguarding, and I worked in international cultural exchange programs where it really changed my life understanding about child safeguarding. So I moved into that field and have been working here for over a decade. Child safeguarding specialist or a child safe standards nerd, depends how you look at it, but it really is sort of the area where I spend most of my time. As we go through today, I'm not talking for too long, but we do have an hour and a half. And while this isn't a session where we're going to deep dive into child abuse, it is what the standards are about. So that might come up as we're discussing it. And I never know what anyone else might say in a conversation. So just please be mindful of that it may occur today. And I can hang around at the end if anyone wants to debrief. Feel free to leave if you are not in the right space to be having these kind of conversations today as well. I think I'm gone a little bit off script when I was thinking about youth participation, about often how this forum works, but still finding that, hoping that it's helpful for everyone. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our Power Up session that Sam mentioned before, and then also child and youth friendly complaint mechanisms and child and youth friendly materials. All of those are sort of different parts and different ways of looking at the Victorian Child Safe Standards and then embedding them into our organisation. And I think it's always nice to remember with the Victorian Child Safe Standards that they're legislated, they're regulated, so they're not something that they're nice to have or we'll get around to. They're really something that organisations need to be prioritising. And I think I've seen a lot that sometimes leadership in organisations have prioritised the pointy end of that. So the bit about making sure everyone gets reporting right, but then maybe missing lots of the other areas of the standards, and they are just important. The one about empowering young people, and I think, a really essential part of building a child safe organisation, a child safe culture, is involving children and young people in the decisions that impact them, which means we need to consult and listen with them. And I know that's an area that you're really familiar with. Our new training, it's for people who are on youth advisory boards or groups, committees, that kind of thing. And I think we just felt that there are more and more of these groups, which are brilliant. But there's a lot of people joining these groups with no experience. There's a lot of people who are facilitating these groups without a lot of experience. I was one of those people. We started a youth advisory group in my last role, and we were thrilled to do it, excited to do it. It was the favorite part of my job, but we totally underestimated how much work was involved to do that, and the support that was needed for our young people that were involved. There's a couple of quotes on the right-hand side from some of the participants who've done this training already. And we kind of wanted a little bit of a mix about what young people should expect from their experience on a youth advisory group, how they should be treated, and what they should do if that doesn't quite work out that way, but also what's expected of them. So we talk about, you'll have the information around your main facilitator who's looking after your group, but what do you do if you've got an issue with payroll or IT? How do you chase up those kinds of things? Obviously, lots of young people have exams or they go away on holidays, and it's fine to miss meetings. It's fine to be late, but keeping that communication up and how that can be frustrating for groups if people just sort of disappear and fall off the radar. Rules around communication, so not friending on social media, that the facilitator doesn't reach out with a private email address, those kinds of things. And again, what they should do if that does happen. I think we found that a lot of information out there for around the child safe standards, around youth advisory groups were for adults, and we have lots of conversations with adults, but we're not having enough of the right conversations with children and young people about what the child safe standards are, and child safety in general, like what good safeguarding looks like. We also know that, you and your organisation might have a brilliant child safe and wellbeing policy, an incredible code of conduct, but we need our children and young people to understand them. We're asking them now to, speak up and say that harm occurred or they've got a problem. And they can't say that if they don't know what the rules are. So they can't say, one of your staff is treating me badly, they've broken the rules, if they don't have that real solid understanding of what your rules are. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute as well. So hopefully this session sort of empowers young people to feel a little bit more confident, but also to seek help if they need more information. We've made a really good checklist for them to take away and go back and work with their organisation on things that might make everyone's experience a little bit easier. So that's just that in a nutshell. And I think Sam's going to drop a link in the chat box as well. Changing topics, if we think about child-friendly complaint mechanisms, what do you think of when I say make a complaint? What do you think a young person thinks of when I say make a complaint? How does that sort of term make you feel? Anyone want to shout out an idea or drop it in the chat box? Got any thoughts? What words come to mind?
I feel like when young people hear about complaining, it's got this stigma attached to being, I guess, like disobedient or unfriendly, maybe.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I like all the things, making fuss, ungrateful, being a whinger, corporate, snitching, all of those. And I've got some other words here that we often sort of associate with that word. So I think when we're designing our child-friendly complaint mechanisms, and the standards say to us that every organisation has to have child-friendly complaint mechanisms, and those mechanisms need to be designed with children and young people. So it's not something that we just do by ourselves. It's thinking about the wording, because the wording itself can be its own barrier to stop children and young people raising small concerns or big concerns. So on the next couple of slides, I've got a couple of examples of processes. Some of these I know were made with children and young people because I kind of know the process that they were designed. Some of them I just found on the website when I was having a look. So I'm not 100% sure if they were designed with children or young people. They've still got some really good elements. So just bear that in mind as we click over. This one's from Uniting, and it's their Talk to Us form. And it looks like it's been workshopped with children and young people. It's got some really good components of different faces to explain different emotions. Instead of using the word complaint, it still has that, but it's got a couple of other choices that might be a little bit easier for people to tick. And then over on the right-hand side, it's got a little bit of explanation about examples of what to tell us if you're being worried, what might happen next. I'm going to go through these fairly quickly just because we don't have very much time, but Sam is going to drop them in the chat box for you. This one is also Uniting, and it's a poster that reinforces their complaint messaging. So they don't just have one document and that's the only way we do it. This is a poster that might be up on walls. It talks about what to do, how long it might take, other things you can do. And I really like that there's a QR code for more information. So it's quite simplified. This one here is from the National Office of Child Safety. So this is the government poster that they've made out. You could use this poster as is, print it off and stick it up on your walls, or you could use the concepts in this poster to help begin your conversation with your young people. I really like how it reminds people that they have rights. There's only 3 steps on there. It's not overly complicated. If you go to their website, there's a whole suite of supporting documents for this. So there's a poster for the adults in an organisation about how they should respond to complaints. There's leaflet form, and it's available in 11 different languages. So hopefully that sparks a little bit of thought, and I really want to hear later what everyone else is doing in this space. Now I've just got a couple of slides on child and youth-friendly materials in general. So again, not 100% sure if they were designed with children and young people. This is from Stonington Council, and it's a child and youth-friendly code of conduct. Again, I'm going to go through fast. So it's a bit more colourful. We're starting to use some graphics, and we're starting to use some simplified language so that children and young people can understand. This one's from the Melbourne Cricket Club, so a completely different organisation. It explains what the club is doing to keep young people safe and who to contact if they don't feel safe. On the right-hand side, it's got some of those really simple but effective comments: be fair, be safe, be inclusive. So again, that really nice messaging. Brenda, you're going to like the next one because this is Creates. Create Foundation, Brenda's already sort of told us a little bit who they are, working with the out-of-home care experience in young people. When they made this, they asked their youth advisory group what child safe means. Their answers on this page, and I really think it's pretty impressive. So what does child safe organisation mean? It means staff are accessible, approachable, take concern seriously, have knowledge about working with those who experience trauma, and actively care about the safety and well-being of the children and young people around them. Love it. I think it's great. Another really different style, this is Netball Victoria. So they have in those boxes, so lots of information, just a tiny bit about a range of topics. They also cover areas about what your rights are, what your responsibilities are, how you report. So simplified. I think this document's actually 4 pages, and I've just popped 2 pages up here for you to have a look at. This one is Communicare in WA, and again, if you go to their website, they have about 4 versions of this document, and the right-hand side is an easy to read one, and they have one for parents and carers as well. So the very detailed staff code of conduct has been then made into 4 different versions to make it more accessible for people in their community. This one's one of my favourites, and it's from the National Youth Council in Ireland, and it's very new. This one is about an 8-page booklet, and it conveys, I guess, all the different ways that this organisation safeguards young people that they engage with. It mentions the law, contacts, it talks to them about what abuse is, what harm is, how we report it, really sort of easy ways to do that. This page I love because it talks about risk in a way that doesn't make people's eyes glaze over. But through that page on the left, it still manages to show that they have a risk management process, and they're things that they've thought about to keep children safe from harm while they're engaged with the organisation. And in Australia, the standards ask us to include children and young people in our risk assessment process. And at the moment, I think lots of organisations haven't kind of included that at the moment. It's just a step that we haven't got to. But children and young people see risk in a really different way to us. So I think it's really important that we do involve them in our risk assessments and talking about ways to keep them safe. And if we've got time later, I can talk a little bit about that as well. All right, I've gone through pretty fast. I'm almost on time. I'm going to show us a 4-minute video before we sort of come back to groups. I'm just going to stop sharing and then reshare. This video, as you can see, is from the Scouts. And sorry, my screen's just gone weird. I really like it because it's a different style of doing the same thing that we've just been talking about. It fits their brand, so it makes sense. It really feels like it was made with children and young people, and they get a whole lot of information into 4 minutes. So let's just watch this.
Hi, I'm Sam, and this is Amelia. Now, we want to talk to you about being safe at Scouts Adventurers. There is a bunch of information on the Scouts Victoria website.
But websites are boring. We should be making child-safe TikToks.
And whilst there's heaps of information, you probably don't want to read it all in one go. So we've got the highlights for you in 10 minutes.
2 minutes.
4 minutes. Scouting should be safe for everyone, but that's not only physical safety or just at the hall.
It includes every interaction you have as a scout, every camp, major event, and even online.
Your leaders do heaps of work to make sure you're safe.
They do lots of training to make sure scouting is as safe as possible for everyone.
Every unit should have a code of conduct.
And we all try to live by the Scout law and promise.
But your rights are bigger than that.
Some of what we are talking about today might bring up feelings or memories that make you feel yuck. If this happens, that's okay.
Find a trusted adult you can talk to, or try one of these numbers. But don't worry, we'll show you these later again too.
Scouts Victoria has an obligation to ensure your safety at scouting events.
The obvious stuff is that every activity is safe and properly supervised.
That you get the food and medical attention you need.
But there might be other things that make you feel unsafe.
Like what?
Anything that makes you feel scared, upset, or uncomfortable.
Really?
Or maybe you've seen something that made someone else feel uncomfortable or worried.
So it might be something that someone else has done or said?
Absolutely. It can be anything that made someone else feel bad. It's not about what's said, it's about how those actions or behaviours made you feel.
Gotcha. I know our leaders will do their best to make sure everything we do at Scouts is safe. Sometimes your leaders might not see something or understand how you feel, so sometimes you need to speak up.
If you're feeling unsafe or unsure at Scouts, talk to a trusted adult.
A trusted adult is a grown-up who you feel comfortable with. A parent, a leader, a teacher.
If you don't have an adult you can trust though, call the Scouts Victoria Child Safe line on 1800 870 772 and Scouts Victoria can be your trusted adult. That number always has someone on the other end of the line ready to help.
And it's free to call from anywhere and at any time.
If you're not sure whether to call or not, don't worry, just call.
The person who answers the phone will ask you some questions and make sure you feel safe.
But remember, if you're in immediate danger, always call 000. So what happens after you raise your concerns?
Well, that depends on what has happened.
But what you do need to know is that Scouts Victoria takes every concern seriously and will help you find the support you need.
If you have any further questions about Scouts Victoria's approach to your safety, then you can ask your leader or send an inquiry through the website.
Now, let's take a moment to save that number.
Hopefully you will never need to call us, but maybe one day you, someone in your patrol, or your friend may need to, and you'll be glad you took 5 seconds to save it into your phone.
The safety of all our members is our #1 priority.
Bam, 4 minutes.
Just going to have my last slide up just so that everyone can have a look at that before we go into our groups. Whoops. Sorry, everyone. You would think that I will be able to do this. I mean, you've done it a million times, almost there. There we go. So I'm just going to have that up for a few seconds before we go into the breakout groups. That was a rapid fire intro to this topic. So I hope it was useful. Sam, do we want to break for questions for me, or do you want to go straight into the breakout groups before we come back and do questions when we come back?
Yeah, Sam speaking. I'm nervous that we're going to get straight into rabbit holes if we open it up for discussion,
Sure.
honestly. I think
Yeah.
we're better off putting people into breakout groups, and then we can have a bigger discussion when we come back. So
Perfect.
if you've got questions for Mandy, Dan's put a couple of thoughts in the chat for you to have a look at, Mandy. And if others have as well, you're welcome to put them in the chat box. I've just put in the chat box what you'll do in the breakout rooms. The idea is to give you about 10 minutes or so, so that we can have a quick break after the breakout rooms, and then we'll come back and have our group discussion. So I will open up those breakout rooms now. I'll end the recording first.